let me give you a few insights on three major activities that we are leading in the Commission Digital Research. The first one is on the world in 2025. This is a kind of foresight exercise that we are leading. The second one is all the questions related to a post-carbon society, towards a post-carbon society. We have two kinds of documents. This one is the last one, which was entitled People, the Economy and Our Planet. And the last point is the question of future of the cities, the world and the European sustainable cities. Let me go in this order. The first point, why are we doing foresight, forecast exercise? The idea is to inspire new policies and to have new food for thought for policymakers. When we publish this report, which is the results on the world in 2025, which is the result of an expert group of more than 20 experts all around Europe, with more qualitative people looking at the wild cards, for example, what could be the disruptive event which could make the things changing. We had also more specialists in modeling, and we had specialists also more in economics, in sociology, in technological development. What are the main conclusions of this report? I think that the subtitle is very illustrative: Rising Asia and Socio-Ecological Transition. The first part, Rising Asia, everybody is aware today that China, India tomorrow, and all the rest is taking a very large part of the economy, obviously the population, and also and more on technology. Some colleagues in the research field speak about the global innovation networks. Now it's not only the production chain which is delocalized, in which we have some part of a car, some part of an airplane, some part of a GSM which is built, which is manufactured in emerging countries, but we have also the R&D laboratory, the design department. The products of the future, many products of the future, will be probably largely developed in emerging countries. We could take the example of Finnish company active in Bangalore, Italian company of car active in Brazil, or French agro-food industry which are in Shanghai. We have many examples of these global innovation networks. Then Asia in the next 15 years will certainly become the first producer and consumer in the world. I feel that this is a strong statement with all the implications. We have also to adapt our production to these emerging markets. We have also the question of research. How many engineers from China, India are now traveling and going abroad? You can find many faculties in the US, but also in Europe. Not enough, but sufficient, and I think that it is the level of researchers from abroad will increase in Europe, are coming largely from Asia. One of the major problems when we look at the world in the next 15 years is the question of poverty. We have really some kind of islands of wealth, of research, of excellence in many of these emerging countries. But it's really islands. You cannot say, when I listen to colleagues who speak about China or India, I think, what kind of part of city are you speaking about? Because there is major difference among themselves. In the next few years, we see that the proportion of unnourished people is around the same. 1/3 of the people are unnourished. But if you now listen to the World Health Organization, you see that obesity is also a major problem in terms of health, in terms of cost of health. And then I think that's a question of distribution which has to be, if not solved, at least tackled in the appropriate manner. At the global level, we have new risks which are emerging. The climate change is the most obvious issue, but you can say also to eventually massive migration. This is also a kind of a problem which could appear. Let me give you a word about energy. Energy, if you take the fossil fuel, just take oil and gas, These resources are very much concentrated in a few areas: Middle East for oil, Russia, Iran for natural gas. I think that also there we have economic and geopolitical problems. If not problems, at least we should be aware of this concentration of fossil fuels. And also there, new technologies can help partly to solve this issue. Just think to the energy savings, energy efficiency, thanks to the emergence of renewable energies, and tomorrow maybe hydrogen and fuel cell, maybe carbon capture and storage, and for the very long term maybe nuclear fusion could be an issue. Another subject even more important for the humanity is the water. By 2025, 3 billion people will be missing water. Then the water also there, we have to take into account the way in which we can recycle used water. In some countries, you have a large proportion of the water which is recycled. In Israel, for example, 70% of the water is recycled. Take the example of new technology, of the desalination technologies, which can be obviously extremely useful in this regard. Then the scarcity of resources, the new movement of population are certainly among the most important tendency for the next 15 years. Where we are going, I think, and this is an idea which has been presented by the Commission, we try always to go towards a multipolar world and towards a world governance. With the G20, it's a first attempt to have this kind of multipolar and world governance, but also there we should make progress. And then the so-called socio-ecological production model and consumption model should be adapted. We cannot anymore go towards a hyper-consumist model, in which, just to give you an example, and this is an example again from energy, an American consumes 8 tons of oil equivalent per year, a European 4 tons of oil equivalent, and the European 1 ton, and the Chinese 1 ton of oil equivalent. And from a Chinese and an American, it's a factor 8 in terms of energy consumption. Can the Earth afford an energy consumption, an American style of way in Asia? I think this is a classical thing. Now let me go to the second part of my presentation about the post-carbon society. Then here in Europe we are trying to lead the world in the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. We have made already a lot of effort since the Kyoto Protocol with both domestic measures and also the so-called flexibility instrument, like the European Emission Trading Scheme, which allow to reduce greenhouse gas emission at the best possible price. When we speak about emission reduction, for example, it's not only a question of technologies that obviously we need, it's also a question of economic incentives and social behaviors. And I feel that in this respect, Europe should do more effort in order to adapt the economic incentives and to try to change some of the social behavior. Let me finish with the third subject, which I feel very important, which has been presented in Shanghai at the EU-China Science and Technology Week, is the question of land use. I think that the cities of tomorrow, both in Europe, but even more in the emerging countries, have to be built in a certain way. If we take some figures, for example, in the sprawled city, like we have many in Atlanta, in Denver, in Los Angeles, you have sprawled cities in which the only transport mean is car. The car is the only efficient transport. You cannot have in a sprawled city a system, a public transport, which is efficient. From the other side, you have the Asian city, thanks to Tokyo, thanks to Shanghai, Singapore, you have an extremely high concentration of population, and their public transport is the only efficient way. In Europe, we are just in the middle, as usual. In Europe, we are between the American model and the Asian developing emerging model, and I think that this is one of our characteristics. We should try to keep our cultural diversity, but taking into account more and more our land use and our sustainability, the sustainable world of tomorrow. Thank you very much.